In this video, we're looking at solving quadratic equations using the completed square form. Before continuing with this video, make sure you are comfortable with writing quadratic expressions in completed square form from topic A18b. Right, let's have a look at this first one. In this first one, the quadratic expression on the left-hand side here is already in completed square form. Now, we could solve this by expanding the left-hand side and then trying to factorize it, or by using the quadratic formula. But in this video, we want to use the completed square form. So here's what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to add 4 to each side of the equation. And that gives me x plus 3 all squared on the left-hand side and 4 on the right-hand side. Now, something squared gives us 4. And what numbers squared give us 4? Well, it's either positive 2 or negative 2. That means we have x plus 3 on the left and plus or minus 2 on the right. Now, just to be clear about what this actually means x plus 3 equals positive 2 or x plus 3 equals negative 2. But to save ourselves the trouble of writing these out separately, we use this symbol here, plus or minus. Now, to find x, what I need to do is subtract 3 from each side of the equation. So I have x on the left, and I have negative 3 plus or minus 2 on the right-hand side. Now, what does this actually mean? Well, it means x equals negative 3 plus 2, or x equals negative 3 minus 2. That leads us to two solutions. If we use the plus in the plus or minus, we get negative 3 plus 2, which is negative 1. So we have x equals negative 1 as one of our solutions. And for our other solution, we have x equals negative 3 minus 2, which is negative 5. So x equals negative 5. There is our second solution. Now, when you first start practicing this, it might help you to use two separate equations like I've got here in red and continue until you get to your solutions. Once you're comfortable, however, you can save yourself a little bit of trouble and just write what I've got here in blue and not bother splitting it up like I've done in these red bits. Let's have a look at this second example. What we need to do in this one is add 8 to each side of the equation here. That gets us x minus 3 over 2 all squared on the left, and that equals 13 on the right. And this is a useful place to get to. We've got something squared, and that equals 13 in this case. Now, what number squared would give us 13? Well, there are two possible answers. There's the positive and the negative square roots of 13. So we can say x minus 3 over 2 has to be either the positive square root of 13 or the negative square root of 13. And I can just write that as plus or minus square root of 13. But remember, this really means x minus 3 over 2 equals positive square root of 13, or x minus 3 over 2 equals the negative square root of 13. Now, to work out what x is, I need to add 3 over 2 to each side of the equation. And that gets me my two solutions. I've got x equals 3 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 13. Now, you could either leave your solution like this, or you could write out the two solutions separately. So we have x equals 3 over 2 plus the square root of 13, and x equals 3 over 2 minus the square root of 13. Those are our two solutions. Here is example C. First of all, notice that we don't have an expression in completed square form here. Also, I've got x's on both sides of the equation. So first I'm going to collect the x's onto one side. In this case, I'm going to choose the left-hand side. And I'll do that by adding 3x to each side. That gives me x squared plus 3x minus 5 on the left and 0 on the right hand side. Now I need to write the left hand side in completed square form. I'm going to get x plus 3 over 2 all squared minus 9 over 4 minus 5, and that equals 0. Now I can actually simplify this here. I can think of 5 as 20 over 4, and I can collect these together into minus 29 over 4. As I said at the start of the video, if you're not sure about how to turn an expression like this into an expression like this in completed square form, then go back to topic A18b. Now let's carry on. I'm going to add 29 over 4 to each side. That gives me x plus 3 over 2 squared on the left and 29 over 4 on the right. Now x plus 3 over 2 is either going to be the positive square root of 29 over 4, or it's going to be the negative square root of 29 over 4. So we say x plus 3 over 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 29 over 4. Next we subtract 3 over 2 from each side, which is really the same as adding negative 3 over 2. So we get x on the left, and that equals negative 3 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 29 over 4. Now, the square root of this fraction, 29 over 4, equals the square root of 29 over the square root of 4, which is just 2. We can just take the square root of the numerator and denominator individually. So I can replace this with this. It's not something we had to do, but it's often nice to have a rational denominator there. So we've got our two solutions. Of course, we can write out the two solutions separately. So we get x equals negative 3 over 2 plus the square root of 29 over 2. And the other solution, x equals negative 3 over 2 minus the square root of 29 over 2. Here's the final example. Again, notice we have x's on both sides of this equation. So I'm going to collect all of those terms onto one side. Now, the important thing is that we subtract the 4x from each side. I'm also going to subtract this 2 as well. We don't actually have to do that now, but I'm choosing to do it now rather than deal with it later. So let's see where that gets us. On the left-hand side, we have 2x squared plus 4x minus 3. And on the right-hand side, we have 0. Here, I'm going to choose to divide the left and the right-hand sides of the equation by 2. So that gives me x squared plus 2x minus 3 over 2. And that equals 0. Now, let's write the left-hand side in completed square form. We're going to get x plus 1 all squared minus 1 squared, which is 1, minus 3 over 2. And that equals 0. Now I'm going to collect these together. Minus 1 minus 3 over 2 is equivalent to subtracting 5 over 2. Again, if you're not sure about how to go from here to here, then check out topic A18b. If you are comfortable with where we've got to so far, pause the video and complete this question. Here's what you should have got. Adding 5 over 2 to each side of the equation, we get x plus 1 all squared equals 5 over 2. That means x plus 1 will be the positive or negative square root of 5 over 2. Finally, we need to subtract 1 from each side, or in other words, add negative 1 to each side. So that gives us x equals negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. Writing out the two solutions separately, we have x equals negative 1 plus the square root of 5 over 2. And we have x equals -1 minus the square root of 5 over 2.